Laughing can be hard. I've been feeling that way a lot lately. There's just plainly not a lot that's funny going on in our world at the moment, especially here in the United States. That being said, I think it's maybe important to try. Catharsis is important. The pressure relief valve that laughter provides is so vitally important. And today's episode is an exploration of comedy and how we can learn to laugh at ourselves and use comedy as a way to cope with our pain and our difficulty living life as trans folks. I've never been one to write the perfect, eloquent, angry response to a shitty political event. All I can do is continue to try to provide refuge, perspective, and maybe some comfort to folks who are hurting. As always, I hope that's what this week's episode does. Before I jump in here, quick correction. In my shout out last week, I seem to have mispronounced someone's name, and I'm not stoked I did that. Freethinker215, thanks for the shout out and for holding me accountable. Also, we had Aaron join as a new patron this week, and our dear friend Seiki increased their pledge. Thank you, and I love you both. The posters from our promotion should be going out this weekend. If you're someone who gets one, I want to see pictures of them plastered all over social media when you get them. Love you, friends. On to the show. Hello, friends, and welcome to the Gay Peace Manifesto. I am Callie Wright, and not a secret, I have kind of a complicated relationship with stand-up comedy as a genre. Lots of people joke about stuff that I necessarily wouldn't joke about. Like, I don't think it makes them bad people. It's just not my thing. And also, I always just feel like I'm waiting for like a trans joke or a misogynist joke or something like that. And so, like, generally speaking, I avoid it altogether. But there is a newer special on Hulu made by our guest today, Robin Tran, that I am very, very stoked on. Welcome to the show, friend.
Oh, thank you. Wait, you haven't seen it?
No, I have.
Oh, okay. I was kind of like, that intro, I was like kind of scared me. I'm like, I don't know if you'll like my comedy because I joke about a lot of things.
Well,
like I joke about everything, you know?
Well, yeah, for sure. And that's kind of that's part of the reason that I love it so much is that, like, it's obviously coming from, at least I feel like it's obviously coming from the perspective of a person who's had those experiences, because, like, when I hear people joke about those things, even like queer comedians joking and like bringing trans stuff into the conversation, I feel like, you're just kind of making it weird. Like, that doesn't really speak to me. I don't know. And
I can, yeah.
Yeah. And like I said, generally speaking, like, you know, obviously, like, in like social justice discourse, there's a lot of like, oh, if you think this is funny, you're a shit person and you're terrible and all that. And like a lot of that stuff, like, I don't feel that way about. It's just, a lot of times I feel like it's just not for me. Like, that's not something that like I find funny or want to joke about, but if other people do, like, not a big deal. Which is what I thought was so refreshing about your stand-up special. Like, my wife and I watched it together, and it was like, oh my gosh, like we can just kind of sit here and laugh and enjoy it. This is fun. I really enjoyed it. So, yeah, so have you always been into comedy? Like, is this like a lifelong thing for you, or?
Yeah, I remember when I was really young and I saw Chris Rock's Bigger and Blacker special. And I remember thinking, like, I laughed so hard it made me almost go crazy, you know? Like, I couldn't believe I could laugh that hard at something. And in addition to that, my dad apparently, which I didn't really know this until I got older, he used to do comedy also. So I think there's something genetic about it in my family. My dad's always been like the jokester of the family. Like, whenever there's a wedding, he'll take the microphone and people expect him to be funny. And I think just seeing that image of somebody that I know with a microphone and being funny, it made me gravitate towards it.
And so tell me about writing these jokes, because I feel like, you know, a lot of people joke about their pain, right? Or like things that they struggle with, and it's a way to cope. And I think some of the disconnect is like, that's in a lot of ways, that's not how I cope with things. So that's why sometimes I feel like it's maybe hard to connect. But tell me about that. Is that your style? Is that how you do things?
Yeah, I think it's like, I don't know if it's healthy, but it's like if I went through something painful, I have to make it mean something, you know, or else it's like a waste of the pain. So I just try to take every traumatic thing that has happened to me and try to make it into a joke so that I can go like, well, at least I got some art out of it or something out of it. I don't know if I'm still doing that as much because I go to therapy now and I'm medicated. Mm-hmm. So my comedy is kind of changing a little bit to more observational stuff. Like, I think my second hour is going to be very different from my first hour. But my first hour was like this kind of my painful introduction to the world. I would say that's what it is. Like, this is my story. This is who I am. This is what I joke about. And I didn't really give my opinions on very many things.
Do you ever feel pressure to be like the funny trans person for cis people? Like, I feel like a lot of comedy that's about queer stuff, even by queer people, it feels like, oh, that's the queer joke you wrote to make straight people laugh. Like, a lot of times I feel like there's sort of that performance, and like maybe some of it's survivalist, right? Because like there are just fewer queer and trans people. So if we write jokes that only we find funny, like we're just not going to find that audience. But like, it also just feels really gross because it's like, I don't know. Tell me about that. Is that a thing that you do or feel pressure to do, or?
Yeah, I think there's a little pressure there. I mean, I live in Orange County, and I'm like the only trans person I know around here, you know, so I have to make non-trans people laugh. But I also try to make jokes where I'm like, if trans people watch this, I want them to laugh too. I try to make my comedy just like, I try to make everyone laugh with it that I like. You know, I don't want people I don't like to laugh at it, you know, but everyone else, like trans people, cis people, gay, straight, whatever. Like, I just want to have like my experiences are universal because they're my experiences, and everyone goes through these emotions. Like, I talk about embarrassment and pain and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And I think everyone can kind of relate to that. So, yeah, I mean, but there is pressure, honestly, to be like, I guess, the trans best friend, you know, of the
yes.
of the country. I mean, people have said that, like, you're like the trans best friend. And I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that, but it's so early on to get trans representation that it's too early to tell if it's a good or a bad thing. You know, it might be bad for the short term and good for the long term, or vice versa. And I don't know yet. I think it's too early to tell.
Yeah. And have you gotten any pushback on some of it? Because like the one, like the joke in the Hulu special that like I almost passed out is the Tranizard joke, right? Like, do you want to call it brave or should I? And
right.
And that's, you know, and I feel like that's one of those things that, like, when I have conversations about that thing, like, I almost feel like I can only talk to other trans people about that concept, because it's like, people are obviously like, they mean well and they're trying to be nice, but like they're making it in a different way, almost as awkward as people who don't like us are. And like, and I almost feel afraid to say that out loud, because I don't want to be like, oh yeah, you're trying to be an ally, but you're doing it badly, so fuck you. Like, I don't want to do that. And I'm just wondering, like, because again, like, that was like, I had to pause it for a second. I was laughing so hard. I was like, I'm going to miss the rest of it. But like, I also feel like part of the reason that I connected with that so much is because it was sort of one of those inside jokes. And like, do you get pushback from people and stuff like that?
You know, I've gotten a surprising little amount of pushback. I got a little bit of pushback for a different joke I did because it was about some people and they didn't really like it. But in terms of like philosophically, have people looked at it? Like, I don't think I've gotten anything really. And I thought I was going to get more, but I think I didn't really say anything bad about cisgender people, so they didn't really push back. And transgender people, like, they watch the special, and I think they're just so happy that they're seeing a trans person, like, in, you know, having so much, you know, visibility. So I got kind of lucky with this one. I know this sounds awful, but I wish that there was a little more pushback. I like a little bit of, you know, like, I'm a comedian, you know, I kind of like a little bit of that, so I can respond and go like, well, you missed the point of the joke, but I didn't get any of that. So I guess I'm kind of lucky in that way.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like what's so good about it is that, like, I think there is so much punching down that it's easy for some people to get the idea that like we can't make jokes about trans people without making fun of transness itself and punching down. Like, those two things just have to go together. And like, I think all of us know that's not true. Like, I gave a talk at a convention, and there was a comedian there, and she did like 10 minutes of jokes about, like, I gave this talk about my experience getting my bottom surgery. And it was this very like heartfelt, emotional, like, gratitude. All of these people helped me do this thing talk. And part of this lady's routine was that she just went through and just made fun of all of the speakers that spoke that day. And like, I'm like, oh my God, she's going to get to me and it's going to be terrible. And she spent like 10 minutes riffing on my talk and none of it was punching down. And I was like, I gave her a hug afterwards and I was like crying because I was like, I feel like I don't feel like I've ever been able to be a part of that because I'm just always waiting for the terrible trans joke, and that never happened. And then like to see an actual trans person making jokes like that. And again, if there's even a little bit of me that's like, oh, like there's probably going to be a joke that like, yeah, it's probably funny. It's just maybe like other people find it funny and that's fine, but I don't. And so like, maybe it's just not for me. And I just never ran into that with your special. And so like, I was really excited to see that.
Oh, so much. That means a lot to me.
Yeah. And so can you tell me a little bit about the pushback that you got about the other joke that you were talking about? I'm interested in that story.
Oh my God. Okay. So I talked about a little girl named Lisa who was racist towards me when I visited the East Coast. And that side of the family watched it. Even though I changed the name, I changed the location. I changed like the relationship, like she's not really the niece or whatever. Mm-hmm. They hated it. Like they just kind of look at it like I was bullying a 10-year-old girl. And my thing was like, well, I'm not really bullying her. It's more about I'm illuminating. And I like that when you're the only Asian in a group full of white people, like the kids are going to look at you differently. And like, it's just kind of illuminating some kind of, systemic racism or whatever you want to take from it, like it wasn't the point of the joke to make fun of the little girl, but they saw it that way. And so, I got some Facebook statuses that were written about me that, this is just my 15 minutes of fame. And, they unfollowed me or they unfriended me or they blocked me on Facebook just over that chunk, that had the Asian Trinidad part.
Yeah.
That whole chunk of, which I still think is funny. I stand by the material. Mm-hmm. And in a way they deny it. They deny that it ever happened, which kind of bothers me more than anything else. It's like, well, you don't have to like the joke, but don't deny that this actually happened. I'm not that good of a writer that I just wrote all this out, like I had to just, I pulled from my own personal experiences. So, and now I'm just going to talk about them whenever I have a chance because I'm mad at them, that they took it that way.
Well, yeah. And that's, I don't know. I mean, I feel like that's the classic, like, white reaction to people talking about racism, cis people talking about transphobia. Like, I feel like that's pretty universal. And that's why I was wondering, because I was seeing the shots of the audience and like everybody was laughing and I was like, gosh, I wonder if there's anybody who's like, oh, well, that's mean. Like you shouldn't be mean to white people. That's like reverse racism. Like,
yeah, I guess I got some people that felt that way. So, whatever, they can feel whatever they want. I wasn't directly making fun of anyone. Even when I made fun of white people, it was more like, this is what happened to me. Mm-hmm. Everything is like, this is what happened to me. I'm not like, hey, I read a social justice book and this is what I feel about white people because I read, like, it was like, I think it was so tame what I said about white people. I'm like, hey, these people were racist towards me. And if you get offended by that, then like, I don't even know what to tell you. Like, you're offended that something racist happened to me because I brought it up. Like, that's the height of, being fragile about that stuff.
Well, right. And that's, that goes back to the whole narrative of like, white fragility and like they're calling everyone else snowflakes, but you can't even handle a gentle, like, hey, that was pretty racist and I'm going to make a joke about it. And like, and just the world.
I make fun of, I made fun of trans people. I made fun of other races. I made fun of other Asian people even, it's like, it's not like I guess like the whole special was like, screw these people, so I don't know. I'm still kind of annoyed by it. Like, just take a joke, I know I hate people who say just take a joke, but I think I'm pretty good at making the joke not like horrendously like vicious or whatever, Well,
yeah, so. Yeah. Well, and I think it was pretty tame. Like, one, punching up, definitely. And like, I think that is one of those times where it's valid. Like, just like calm down and just chuckle it because like. I mean, I've been there before. I've been able to look back and like, oh God, yeah, I was like, I was like tokenizing someone and I was like being classic white person. Like you got to be able to own that stuff about yourself a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
And another thing that I was surprised about, I watched the like the comedy, the battle that you did.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
And I was just like, when I first saw that, I was like, I'm not watching it, because because the whole thing is like trying to insult each other. Right. And I was like, I scrolled past that in my Facebook feed like 5 or 6 times. Like, nope, not doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me about that experience.
Oh, roast battling?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done it like 11 times now. I've always loved roasting. My friends and I were really poor growing up, so all we had was making fun of each other. That was our coping mechanism. And then so when I saw that there was some roast thing, it was like 1998. It was called Night of a Thousand Bleeps. It was South Park, and then it was the roast of Drew Carey. And I remember when I watched the roast of Drew Carey, I laughed so hard during it that I was in tears. And I just thought, like, I want to roast someday. It's kind of a dream of mine to just but it's like a joke, but it's love in the end, right? Like the meaner thing I say about you, the more you can laugh, and then the more I can say, hey, I love you in the end, right? And you hug each other. So in the end, it's not, there's consent, which is important, right? Both people consent to the idea of we're going to make jokes about each other. And also, like, everyone gets made fun of, so no one feels left out. And I was starting to feel left out. When I came out, comedians usually make fun of each other a lot. Like, they stand around in a circle and make fun of each other. But I remember when I came out, everyone was really careful not to make fun of me. And I was like, see, I want you guys to make fun of me. I don't want the internet guys to make fun. I don't like those jokes because they're not really jokes. They're like, go kill yourself and all this stuff. Those aren't funny. But like, if you're a comedian, treat me like you did before I came out. Like, please, like, make fun of me, or the way I dress, or the way I talk. So I was feeling this void, like, and I didn't like the narrative of don't make fun of trans people. And I didn't like the narrative of you can say anything about trans people. I wanted to kind of like navigate, how can we make fun of trans people and still it be loved, so that I don't feel like erased. And so when I saw the roast battle, I'm like, that's perfect. And I remember before my first roast battle, I did have the idea, like, am I selling out my entire gender by doing this? I had that thought, but I also felt like as an individual, I've always wanted to do this. And I know that in the end, they're not going to be mean to me, because that's not what that room is about. So after the first one, and they showed me so much love when I won my first battle, and the crowd reaction to me was like so much love, and someone gave me flowers, like, I was like, this is such a good feeling. I want to keep doing this. And so like, it's become just a hobby of mine that I do it as much as I can.
Yeah. And again, like, I have such I don't know. I have such conflicted feelings about that, because I always feel like I want to participate in those spaces too, where we sort of like gently rib each other and make fun of each other and that kind of stuff. And then it's like, but if you don't like clearly express where the line is, because like there are some things, like, I think it's really funny to joke about the fact that I used to have a penis, right? But like, yeah, I got to be in a certain crowd for that to be funny. And again, it's like, I think it all comes back to like punching up versus punching down. And so like if I see a group of dudes like ribbing each other over their penis size before surgery, I would just be like, hey man, I got some I'm trying to get rid of, if you're interested. Yeah. You know what I mean? And like, everybody would laugh, and there would just be this look like, I don't know if I'm allowed to think that's funny. Yeah. And it's hard, because it's like, I want people to think hard about that stuff. Like, why do I think this is funny? Yeah. Do I think it's funny because I think trans people are gross, or because I think the like transness is funny, or is it like just general comedy, like the unexpected, the reversal, like that kind of stuff. And so like it feels really uncomfortable in some ways for me to give cis people permission to laugh at jokes like that. But I don't think we can really like fully participate in society until we reach that point. Does that make sense? Yeah,
that's how I kind of feel about it. It's like, I don't like every joke that's told about me. I like maybe 70% of the jokes that are told about me. There's like 30% where I'm like, oh, you didn't have to say that. But I kind of I know this sounds awful, but I just chalk that up to collateral damage.
Yeah.
Like I can just choose not to participate at all. And then all of a sudden, the roast battle, this huge thing in comedy, there are no trans people. So like, what, do we not exist in this society where everyone gets made fun of? Like that, it feels more wrong to me for that to happen. And I know that there's a whole punching up, punching down dynamic, that I think is important, but I try not to think of that too hard. Like I try to make my comedy tries to punch up just by its very nature of who I am. But I feel like if I accidentally punch down every now and then, I don't think it's like if I overthink it, then my art will suffer. Does that make sense? So I try not to think about it too hard, like, or else because in the end I want to also have fun, you know. And if you overthink what you say all the time, then it's not as fun as it used to be. But I've always been self-conscious thinking that way, especially in the social justice communities. Like, it feels like I'm like a very problematic person in the community, and I somehow get away with it. But there's one day I'm not going to. Like, I think that day is coming, you know? So I don't know. That's just my own insecurities. I don't know if people really feel that way about me or not.
Yeah, well, I think it comes back to the idea of like, you know, if we're being treated like everyone else in society, like in some ways that's a win, right? But there are also some really harmful norms in society. And so like us slotting ourselves into those norms, like I think it's a valid thing to ask if that's a good thing or not. Right. You know, because in some ways it is, for sure. Because then we're just kind of living normal everyday life because, you know, obviously everyone's different, but like I've definitely reached a point in my life where I don't want my transness to be like the most important or upfront thing about me. Like it's an important part of my life, but it's not all that I am. But like, I feel like because of those kinds of conversations, in a way it sort of has to be. And like, is that the dichotomy that you struggle with?
Yeah, I think so. I remember when I did the Comedy Central roast battle, when I was on TV and the host introduced me as the first transgender contender, and the audience like cheered really loud before they even saw me, right? And I know maybe that's tokenizing or whatever, but to me, I was very touched by that. That this audience, like in 3 years ago, they wouldn't have done that. They would have just been quiet, or they would have been like, "What? A trans person? What's that?" You know? But now they're more accepting of me, and so now that they kind of just see me as like a battler and not a trans battler, like because they've seen me so much, like they don't see me as just trans anymore. They're just like, that's a really funny comic, you know. Don't put that disclaimer or explanation in front of her, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I fight so hard against that because I feel like sometimes that's what I like. I want to lead with that because in some circumstances I think it makes sense to, but then, you know, I look at what actually affects the way I navigate the world now. Cause like I've had surgery, I lost a bunch of weight, that kind of stuff. Generally speaking, like people just read me as like a butch looking lesbian woman in public, right? I don't think people necessarily see me and think like, oh, there's a trans woman. Like that definitely used to be the case. And now the fact that I'm walking around holding hands with my wife is actually that affects more of the way that I navigate the world and society now. And part of me wants to be like, no, I'm trans too. And I have this whole experience that goes with that. And like, that's an important part of me. And sometimes I just like, I would rather people just not know. I would rather it not be a thought. I'd rather it not be a concern. And like, I almost feel like hashtag trans privilege, I guess, like when it benefits me to do so, I'm happy to lead with being trans because like that automatically makes me the interesting person in the room.
Yeah. I think that goes back to what I said before, though. I think the reason why I make jokes about it is like, I think we want our pain to mean something because being trans is very difficult, right? So sometimes like you're going through life and you just want to yell out loud, like, this is really hard. You know, like you just want to tell people how hard it is, right? But then like you just get that off your chest and now you're done with it. But now they're like, well, I want to hear about how hard it is now. But then you're like, well, now I don't want to talk about it anymore. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's almost like we want both. And I think it makes sense, you know, because of how society is. But I try not to, my life has gotten better when I let a lot of stuff slide. And I probably shouldn't let a lot of stuff slide, but it's just more like I don't want to just be seen as that anymore. And if I let them know that it hurts my feelings so much, they're gonna keep doing it to hurt my feelings, right? But if I show them that yeah, do whatever, say whatever you want, do whatever you want. Eventually, like they'll move on, or they'll like go like, all right, fine, I'm just gonna treat you like a person because the other thing I'm doing is not working.
Gosh, do you find that works? Because that's my
Yeah,
thing is like when people
yeah.
are trolling relentlessly, like they just don't seem to stop, like regardless of what you do.
People who troll, I don't even think about them.
Yeah.
It doesn't work on them, no. But I mean, like people who are like, people who always want to ask you questions, or like they see you and they're kind of like walking eggshells and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they're afraid of misgendering you, like they're really afraid of it. So they avoid talking to you altogether. Like I find like if I open myself up to those people, eventually they just like treat me like any other person, and they don't even see trans anymore.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot of time and effort, which makes me a little bitter, And so I don't know. I don't know if I'm answering your question. I'm kind of talking about it in a roundabout way.
Well, it's complicated.
It's very complicated. Yeah.
Because I don't feel like someone can really know me if they don't know that about me. Like if they don't know about all of the things that I've been through to get to where I am in life.
Yeah.
And I feel like if I'm trying to have a relationship with someone, I mean, that's a two-way street, right? Like, they share stuff with me, I share stuff with them, and, I learn about them and they learn about me. But I feel like in those conversations, like I want to be in control of that. Like I want to share whatever I want to share about my past and then just like move on and forget about that. And, in some ways I think that's fair. Like I'm okay owning that and saying that like I have a right to do that. But I also think it's kind of, I don't know, it's maybe selfish and not the best way. I'm not really sure.
Yeah. I think we want to let people know how resilient we are too, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
if you're trans and you're doing it, you're creating art or whatever, and you're thriving as a trans person. Like you want people to know, like I'm so much more resilient than you realize. Like I could have just like no one would have blamed me. I could have just laid around and just talked about how hard it is all the time. Because like leaving the house, even 3.5 years in, like I've transitioned 3.5 years ago, leaving the house wearing like the clothing that I wear and the makeup, it's still like really like still hard. I still have to like let out a huge sigh, and like I'm someone who's been on TV with it, but it's still like hard just walking down the street or to the grocery store or to Target or whatever, because everyone stares at you. And just like I don't think people will ever know how daunting it is to have everyone stare at you all the time. And I just want people to know, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like people who only kind of sort of know me get this idea that I'm just this, like, I'm a textbook extrovert, right? And in most cases I am. Like I have some serious anxiety around certain specific kinds of social situations. And I almost feel like I have to go out of my way to tell people that kind of stuff because they get the idea that I'm just like this like super confident, really put together person. And I'm like, I mean, sometimes, but like it takes a lot of effort to be that. And I feel like sometimes people put me on a pedestal, like, oh, like you're so confident, you're so good at talking to people. You get up in front of crowds and give talks and all of that kind of stuff. And so like part of me wants to spend time talking about like, yeah, like I went to the skating rink the other night and had a panic attack and left because I couldn't handle the crowd,
I have that too. Like I have bipolar.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, sometimes I just want people to tell me that when I'm really depressed and I can't get out of bed, it's valid. I just want to tell people, I just want them to feel how hard it is, and so they can be like, oh, it's okay that you're depressed. Like you're not making it up in your head. You're not crazy or whatever, So I think that's how I kind of feel about that.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what do you got planned next? What's in store?
Well, I mean, I've always kind of lived my life like without goals, which is not good, like I've always like try to get through the day, because that's what having bipolar is, it's getting through the day. So all the successes I've had so far has been kind of by accident, where I just keep on getting more and more success, but my body's like, what is going on? Like I haven't even planned it out. So like I have like some meetings with some networks and I'm going to try to write a pilot or something, and I might get representation soon. And I don't know. It feels like ever since the special came out and the Comedy Central thing came out, my life has gotten a lot bigger, and I'm not used to it yet. So I'm trying to keep my mental health like in order, so that I can handle all the things that are happening right now.
Yeah. Tell me about that. Tell me about that process, having to deal with that.
Well, it's, I always want to just lay down.
Yeah.
That's all I want to do. Like I didn't want to get dressed. I didn't want to do the podcast because like I just get anxious, I get anxious with everything. And then I have to just like do it and don't think about it. And then you'll be happy that you did it. That's what I have to keep telling myself every time I have a show tonight. And like it's going to be a great show, but I'm not looking forward to waiting for the show. Like it's like 9 hours from now. Oh my God, what am I going to do for 9 hours? And I just freak myself out, And so it's a lot of my life is just managing the stress that I feel about everything that I'm doing.
So remind us the name of your special, so anyone who's listening who hasn't seen it can go check it out.
Well, the special is called "Don't Look at Me," but based on a joke in the special. Yeah. If you type in "Don't Look at Me," you won't find it. You have to look up either Robin Tran or Comedy Invasion. Invasion with Asian, not the way it's usually spelled. Comedy Invasion, because there's other Asian comedians.
Right.
Yeah. So that's how you have to look for it.
Good stuff. Well, thanks for coming on the show. Congrats on all your success, and definitely wishing you more of the same. I am really excited that there's just like good quality trans comedy out there that's actually getting attention. Because I don't know, I often feel forgotten as a trans person in those conversations, and it's like,
yeah.
And it's just one of those things, just like, I'm not even sure I want to participate, but I want to have the option. So.
Right. Yeah. I understand that completely. Yeah.
Well, that, my friends, is going to do it for this episode of the Gaytheist Manifesto. If you think what we do here is important, please share this around to your friends. Search the Gaytheist Manifesto on Facebook and Twitter to find us there. I am at Gaytheist Callie on Twitter. You can email us at podcast@thegaytheistmanifesto.com. We are a part of the Trans Podcaster Visibility Initiative. We're a group of trans podcasting badasses working to bring more trans voices into podcasting and other content creation. Search the Trans Podcaster Visibility Initiative on Facebook for more info. If you want to support the show and the activism we do, you can head to patreon.com/thegaytheistmanifesto. Make a per episode donation as little as $1 per episode. And if that's not in the cards, you can give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. Share us around to your friends. It all helps and it all makes a difference. Before we go, I want you to know that if you're lost, you're hurting, you're scared, if you feel like no one cares and no one understands, you need to know there's a community out here that loves you, cares for you, knows that you're capable of amazing things, and that you are worthy of love. If you're struggling, please don't be afraid to reach out. Until next time, friends, this is the Gaytheist Manifesto.